Okay. Hey everyone, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly reading series from miserytourism.com where we welcome transgressive and outsider authors to come share their work with us. Yeah, fuck it. That's the whole thing. We're going to start off tonight with Gabriel, who has you have a flash piece that you wanted to read, right?
Yeah, I literally just finished this 5 minutes before we started, so it's super rough, and I don't know where the fuck it came from, but and it's untitled so far, but we're gonna get right into it.
This shit's so weird. Transgressive writing.
Tickets for the West Mountain experience could only be purchased on the other internet. There was danger, undocumented disappearances. Same could be said for Mount Everest. No one was stopping you. You just had to look harder for access. For many, it was their first time on that internet. These days, you had to look deeper into the dark for an authentic cultural experience. It was at West Mountain, uncharted Appalachia. A map can't cover every little thing. The group we descend on are mostly white, some ethnic, but all a mix of curious progressives and edgelord vets of dark tourism. All share an all-knowing fraternal glee, a fizz of courage and camaraderie. If they are nervous, nothing is revealed. The tour guide is a man, a black man. He wears an Indian or something headdress of multicolored feathers and skulls. Are the skulls real, someone asks. My name is Sisyphus, he answers. I'll be your guide. Feel free to ask any questions, but wait until we are done. West Mountain is an imposing presence, but because it is an old coal mine, it won't take long to reach the top. Its circuitry of tunnels and switchbacks. Now we begin, says Sisyphus, leading the group into the trailhead. He doesn't say another word for the duration of the short 30-minute climb, even when someone asks him if Sisyphus is his real name. How funny that we are climbing a mountain led by someone named Sisyphus, if people ask him that a lot. West Mountain is among layers of dense green, lush, and neglected forests. They are not sure how they got there since they were all busy talking, getting to know one another on the bus. When they reach the top of West Mountain, the road has disappeared. It's all green as far as the eye can see. The mountain is tall, but the trees are taller, and now they are without sky. At the top, there is a large basin, or pool, or what is this, someone asks. Gather around, and I will explain, says Sisyphus. This is the sacred pot of the tribe where they would make their stews, family style, as you say. Are you a descendant of the tribe, someone asks. Miss, the only tribe I belong to is the human tribe, he says. The group laughs in righteous solidarity. Maybe they're relieved the experience is not that authentic. It would be irresponsible for me to say all lives matter, but I am from the human tribe, your tribe, he says, outstretching his arms, presenting themselves to themselves. Smiles smatter across engaged, giddy faces. A feeling of all is one now that the tribe's drink is being distributed and consumed eagerly. A delightful fermented fruit juice, someone exclaims as, wow, boozy. The pool is a natural hot spring, he says. When the indigenous slave tribe would make their stews, any liquid removed would be replenished within minutes, a miracle spring. It is hot. Is it hot, someone asks? It's a hot spring, he repeats. Can you get in, someone asks? Oh yes, it's very lovely, he says, his inflection hillbilly with Creole sophistication. I love your accent, someone says. They were cannibals, right? Someone else says. Impatient Sisyphus might be holding back the good stuff. Yes, they would capture and kill humans. You know, our tribe, he says, presenting themselves to themselves again. They were preserved in the mines below. Some early canning techniques were used as well to sustain them into winter, he says. So the slave tribe believed in human sacrifice then, someone says. Was it to appease a god? Yes, while killing and consuming humans was to appease their tribal gods. But they clearly picked up the brutality of their slave masters who were practicing similar atrocity. Some were born into the slave master's atrocity, so they knew no different, no contrast to the brutality through submission. They learned the goal was to dominate others until they could no longer speak. Cannibalism would be the logical conclusion of dominance. But things are different now, as we know. Please, won't you step inside the spring? Clothing is optional at West Mountain. Some are trepidatious, change the subject under the guise of processing information. Others disrobe completely, naked for the full effect of submergence, sticking toes in first to check temperature. Satisfied, their whole bodies sink into the soup. Ones who's changed the subject feel major fear of missing out since they paid the money, so they follow the leaders as Sisyphus remains stoic when he isn't nodding his head for encouragement. Don't worry, if it feels too hot at first, your body will adjust, he says to one woman who is having second thoughts. But she doesn't want to be the only one to doubt the hospitality. All 12 of their bodies do adjust, surrendering to the heat quickly, just as Sisyphus said. Their heads hit the water with a splish-splash stagger until they go face down, bubbles rising as the bodies bob freely, now lighter, free from the weight of spirits. With only their backs exposed from the scalding liquid, it looks like they're playing a game of endurance, yet no one has endured, so that's the end of the game. Three other black men who are dressed like Sisyphus, emerge from the corner. They hear the crowd silence as their cue. One holds what appears to be a boat paddle until it begins to stir the soup. Sisyphus leads the other two to the corner to retrieve the tables and place settings. The one who stirs prods the bodies, making sure they're lifeless, cooking evenly, while the others set up the tables, which will soon be covered in expensive white linen cloths, then large white bowls. The men, only men who just arrived at the bottom of West Mountain, will sit two to each table. Sisyphus begins his 30-minute descent to lead them up. One by one, the new arrivals reach the top, led by Sisyphus. They are men, white men, dressed in expensive suits to match the expensive meal in synergy with their overall expensive taste, which, to their frustration, they must go painstakingly out of their way to savor. Until the meal begins, where all is forgiven, where this forbidden luxury is almost tangible. It's an eternity to their impatience until they hear the sound of the chainsaws. At least it's a start. The broth will now be made, so they are not bothered by the invasive noise. Some even wink to one another. Here it comes, it's getting ready. The only ones who would be ruffled by the screeching machinery are no longer conscious, so they'll have no chance to point out that it's inaccurate to the period, to the authenticity they were seeking. Once Sisyphus and his coworkers ladle up the stew to the client's bowls, they're dismissed to leave until cleanup the next morning, so the guests can commiserate in privacy. There is much to talk about and must be done without prying eyes or ears, even though they have all shared the most intimate exchange, other people's blood. Likely, they're dismissed because they have all shared the most intimate exchange, other people's money. Sisyphus and his coworkers descend the West Mountain, removing their incongruent Indian voodoo headdresses on their way down. They board the bus they came in, now empty. Sisyphus will drive, but since the costumes have been removed, they can now call him Bill. As Bill starts the engine, he sees the new guy in back lean over his seat, staring at the aisle until he vomits. "I'm sorry, Bill. It's okay," he says. "We'll clean it in the morning, and eventually you'll acclimate to that feeling."
Wow, that was wild. I love.
I was going to say the same exact thing.
I mean, I love the way it starts by setting up like the pretensions that we have about like ancient spirituality, right? And the like weird like voyeurism we have for the horrors of the past. And then it like
Right.
dives directly into those horrors. It like shreds that pretension. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. You know,
Thank you.
and I think the ending with the vomiting and the idea that now he'll acclimate to that. I think that really twists the knife, right?
Yeah, that's sort of, yeah, that's
Yeah.
hopefully puts it all in perspective a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. No, I thought that was great, Gabriel. I feel like Rudy probably has something to say because he's been going wild in the chat.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing. I really love how the ending sticks it. You know, that eventually you'll acclimate to that. That's such a good line to end it with. Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
thank
Like
you,
just the fact that
Gabriel.
his name ends
sorry,
up being Bill is the best.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was good twist. And like I don't know, the use of Sisyphus and the it sets you up for an expectation of the kind. It like cleverly sets you up to expect a certain kind of like existential or like pretentious kind of story.
Yeah, that was
then
my
completely
aim.
undermined. Yeah. Which I think is awesome. Well, that was great, Gabriel. Thank you so much for reading.
Thank you.
Is Blick here yet? If not, we can come back to him later in the night. I know Daniel is with us because I saw him earlier. At least or maybe he's. Oh, yeah, there you are.
More computers, more problems. Am I right?
Hey, Dan, I'm having a little bit of trouble. Oh, there we go. Okay. I can see you now. Not sure if I
Unfortunately
can
for
move-
you.
Oh, you're moving back here. Okay.
Ugh.
I'll put the link in the chat here.
Forgot how to use my phone all of a sudden. Is anyone else? Is it hot in here for anyone else?
Oh god, it is hot as shit here.
It's a
My
scorcher.
speakers, fuck it. I can't hear shit. Oh, god damn it. Fuck's sakes. Sorry, I know I found the problem. Let me in so I can hear.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you. I was tweeting I was tweeting about the reading. I didn't realize you had your alter ego in the lobby there.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know. It's way too hot to be coherent right now. So I'm just gonna read.
Okay. All right, it's all yours, Dan.
This is like start of an inscription from a poem that I published with a Matrix magazine in like 2016. It was like the first thing I ever wrote. Okay. The universe wants something, but won't say what it is. If your heart is in the way, you should remove it. In a busy grocery store, the aisle numbers are code. And the voiceover, the PA, is God because the universe wants something. Put your head down in a crowded bar. Feel the wings crack through your shoulder blades. God put something inside of you, but won't say what it is. Waste the days glaring into a fear portal while plagues rage through your cul-de-sac. If your heart is in the way, all the DMT in the world won't fix the universe dying inside you. Your third eye is pulling your third leg. You should remove it. Do you do a lot of acid? Never tried it. I don't believe you. If I want to talk to ghosts, I'll just smell a weed plant. I don't know what that means. If I really want to get fucked up, I'll touch it. It's almost like a real party. Online speed dating projected into the consciousness of others. Flipping between women who are just users with numbered days of usage. To determine the value of every user, their active time on the app is divided by the amount of attention they get. There is no preset value of attractiveness. Attractiveness is a variable determined by attention. You can be unphotogenic and still look like a fun person, or maybe just easy. I'm making simulated eye contact through the black eye on the bezel of the smartphone. I'm bi, but men are easier to deal with, and I don't have a lot of time these days. Dark hair and glasses, educated, but still in that dead zone between being smart and realizing it doesn't matter how smart you are. You will never be the smartest person in the world. It's a tough lesson to learn, especially if you went to a top 5 university. The tone of her voice has this adversarial aspect. She's trying to push buttons she thinks exist. She's pulling the collar of her faded sweatshirt like she's nervous, but when she does, I see her glancing at another screen. She's tracking my eye movements. That's depressing, but not for the reasons you think. So what's your deal? Moderately flirty, but still running the hard to get game. I'm interested, but still want you to feel uncomfortable. Lady, I'm always uncomfortable. When I die, I hope I'm born into the arms of a mother somewhere warm. Peru, Mexico, Cameroon, or Algeria. You don't like cold weather? No, if I'm born there, it means I did the right thing in this life. Karma is about working backwards. The enlightened are born and die barefoot. Do you like being pegged? I am being split tested. Horny, straight men online are an infinite pool of free psychological research. Never pull your dick out when the city has more neuroscience research centers than dive bars. She smiles the smile someone presents when they want something from you, but have no idea what you're talking about. Not since the last time. Didn't have fun? I wasn't conscious for it. I just woke up being dumped onto my lawn bleeding from the ass. It's my favorite part when someone pressed a canned question to see if you're homophobic and they get an answer they have no pre-generated response for. Dating's gotten more difficult since straight women found their own version of pickup artistry in the game. They don't need to wear stupid hats in clubs. They can exist and be cops interrogating you for answers they don't actually want to hear. So that's the end of that conversation. I see you're reaching for the block button, and I can't help but smile. Been spending years to make sure the next iteration is set up before I pass. I know I'll be put somewhere far away from where I started, so I have to be able to find my way back. There are only a few kind of breadcrumbs that can survive water, fire, wind, and burial by earth. Not that there's a moral imperative, it's fun. If you wanted to move money around internationally, there's a low-tech way to do it. Why do you think musicians have $80,000 watches out of the box? It's the easiest way to bring an investment visa worth of liquidity through customs. These people are too lazy for that. They have too much money to go back and forth. There's a garden of lattice work between continents made of shell corps. They play high tech with it, bureaucratic with it. It's only fair that you join the game on the same framework. Find a bench and eat your lunch and read a book outside the offices. Don't look at your phone. Just look around and read. Use the vibrate feature on your Fitbit to give you Morse code notifications in case your deauthor has issues with something. The office is full of people, or maybe it's empty with a few machines running. Steal their handshakes. Do it for your week until you've got enough money to pick the lock with a spare GPU or an old Dell Optiplex server off eBay. Sitting on the bench outside the art gallery with my favorite statue. I'm talking about Boston Dynamics, robot dogs, and the NYPD, and my vision is blank, staring at the small patch of horizon between skyscrapers and smog. A guy with slicked back long hair on rollerblade slides past and lingers before turning to stare at me. You need to take acting lessons. It sounds like a threat, but there's unease tinging his tone. He is scared, fight or flight. But acting lessons? I am a bad actor. Twisting my head gives the rollerblader a shock. He repeats the statement. You need to take acting lessons. Over his shoulder, crossing the intersection diagonally. It's weird how quickly shame can ruin your day. Are you okay? This woman I was talking at has this worried but understanding look on her face. It reminds me of something. Spitting the words out like broken teeth reminds me of all the other times his feelings hit me. Like he's telling me I'm a bad actor. Reminds you of what? It's hard to explain. But it's easy to explain, but difficult to understand. As a kid, you learn to speak to grandparents differently than your parents. Parents differently from your siblings. Speak to siblings differently from your friends, and friends are different from your teachers. Teachers are different from cops. If I reached for food on the table without saying may I, my father would stab my hand with a fork. If I left the table before asking if I could be excused, I'd get cornered and he'd pull himself up to scare me. It stopped working when I hit 16 and I grew a few inches taller than him. He couldn't puff himself up bigger than I stood, so he focused on psychological intimidation. It's strange to have these methods carved into your programming by a man who couldn't hold a job or money for longer than it took to buy a zip. When I realized it was my grandmother who kept telling him that he was doing a bad job raising us, his shame was the parent of my shame. His shame was the child of his mother's shame, and so on and so forth. Do you want to go listen to music? The woman is so sweet and makes me want to sob, but it must be so weird to watch someone coil into themselves like a snail into a shell on what passes for a second date. It's strange to have these manners and etiquette embedded in the way this persona presents itself to the world. It's strange to be unable to present myself as who I am. People I meet think I come from money, old money, aristocratic money, because I say pardon me instead of what or huh. I try to explain that it's because I would get stabbed with a fork if I didn't, but they never believe me. Manners and etiquette are programmatic. They will propagate like a genetic disease. Explaining anything about this is like when Glenn Greenwald had to teach Edward Snowden how to explain things clearly and speak slowly, but all the ways every nation state on the planet technology to create an octagon, a massive prison with no bars, no walls, just eyes. But this rollerblader telling me I need to take acting classes is a call to a different kind of function. Within my memory, I don't know who put it there, but I know who knows how to trigger it. It reminds me of something I've forgotten. Maybe it hasn't happened yet. I look up from my feet to feel her hands rubbing my back, and that reminds me of something else. I wish I say, treat every living thing as if it was at some point your mother inside my head, even though she doesn't seem to turn. We go to buy beer, and I notice the Korean family that runs the debt by my apartment are very kind, but they never pay attention. Their eyes follow a tablet playing K-dramas or the news whenever they drop their change everywhere except my palm. The Bomber of Dark Ale has interesting artwork, but I'm not going to pretend I don't get fucked up on purpose. I sit with her in the park and open the beer. Something is off about the beer on the first swig, but it's not the beer. It's the additives. The wrong kind of citrus at the wrong time is like getting a phone call you can't send straight to voicemail. I think I need to go home. I'm sorry. It's okay, text me later if you want. They want my attention again, and I won't have a choice. 2 knocks on my door. I make sure my shoes are tied before walking back to my apartment. The walls are breathing, and I know I only have a few more minutes to shut everything down and make it look as unassuming as possible, because I don't know how long I'll be gone for. In police training, they teach you how to knock on a door because every cop knocks the same way. It's an entitled knock. It's a courtesy knock for the occupant to answer in 5 seconds before they kick the door in. I sit on my hands before I hear the door handle twist.
That was awesome, Dan. I love like how that piece vacillates between being like vast and dystopian and being like really intimate and personal. Like there's so many details there that like in a different sort of book would be, or a different sort of story would be used to build this kind of like cyberpunk surveillance state like thriller story, but it's all at the service of a really like a really sad sort of personal, like as I said, like really intimate sort of story. And I really love the contrast there, and it was beautiful. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, thanks. I've noticed like it's hard to not write cyberpunk when you're talking about reality, like present reality, because it all intersects.
Yeah, and it's so dystopian too. Like what
Yeah.
like what is like when you're on Twitter 24 hours a day, like what the fuck is the surveillance state, you know? Yeah,
Yeah, it's everyone is both cop and prisoner,
right.
guard and prisoner.
I started using cyberpunk realism this past week when I was talking about, I guess the stock market and some other things, but just reality is kind of is now that science fiction.
Yeah. Philip K. Dick wrote Scanner Darkly in like the 70s or something. But you read that novel and everything that in that novel has already happened. It's not the future.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard of this new app? It's about the most dystopian thing I've heard of in a long time.
It's called
It's called
Zoom.
New. No, it's called New. It's like human. They're calling it human. Oh God, what is it? You basically you buy people's personality to basically tell them what to do with their life in a day.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Fuck, sign me up. I need
look
money,
it up.
and I am submissive by nature.
No, look
just
it
going
up.
to
It's
do
nuts. It's totally Black Mirror shit. Like,
They're like decentralized like social media marketers.
yeah.
Not everyone can
Holy-
now become
I
get
don't
paid
know.
5 cents
it
to
is an
post a
occult
link to.
self, like as like an occult self-dissociative practice, just like outsourced insight roles.
Yeah, no, that's nuts. That sounds like a role-playing game to me. I mean, I thought they were going to pay me to play a pervasive game where I get to change my character every time somebody pays me more money. Like, that sounds awesome to me. Sounds dangerous. I'm in.
Yeah.
They're calling it the human stock market.
Damn.
Oh, wow.
I'm ready to be commodified.
We already had one of those a long time ago, and it didn't work out too well.
Oh, boom.
It's the same
God's
shit over and
ass.
over. Oh my god. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Unity, you're up next. Thank you so much, Dan.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, I think you promised on Twitter earlier this week that this was going to be an extra nasty one, so it better.
I think so. It's hard to tell. So actually, my friend Sybil wrote this, but she couldn't make it tonight because she died.
Oh no.
So it's called Inside Source. Your little boyfriend sure loves you, says the woman. Can't get it up unless you're passed out on G. Then he sure gets hard. Here, says the man. He hands you a white styrofoam cup. Drink this. Smoke. Snort another. Swallow. I saw him rape you, says the woman. When he was here before, you was sleeping. His little dick got so hard. Couldn't get it up when you was awake, but soon as you passed out, she giggles. And now where is he? He left you. Your boyfriend left you alone with us. The liquid from the cup hits your stomach. The smoke fills your lungs. then your blood. The hotel room expands, becomes everything. You slip out of your clothes. You fall onto the bed. You descend through a trap door and awake in pure consciousness. Your essence is warmth. Your body is breath. Something soothes, then radiates, then glows. You are mere atmosphere. You are only a suggestion, a minimum. You are sound. You are waves. You expand, then contract, subtract, then multiply. All that exists is love, is breath, is primal animal magnetism. There's you and the room and the beautiful people within it. You look at the man and the woman the way the lion considers its meat. Your eyes say to eat them. Your stomach squeals. You roll over to your belly, push up to your hands and knees. He did it because I asked him to, you blurt out. He did it because he loves me. The man and the woman exchange a glance. The woman covers her mouth with her hand. That's so sweet, she giggles. Hear that? He did it because he loves her. The man blows smoke rings at the center of the room. His left eye twitches. He rubs his chin. He ponders. Love is good, he says. Love is sweet. He's swimming sideways towards you, through the air, his face blown up like a shiny balloon, gold teeth glinting. You gaze through his translucent skull, see the metallic gears grinding and twisting beneath the skin. Love is good, he repeats, but love is temporary. You're wrong, you say. Love is eternal. Family is forever. Everything you love in this life will be yours for all time. Do anything you want to me. Anything at all. You understand? Rape me. Gut me. Feast on my flesh. I love you. You hear me? I want you to do it. Your knees give out. You flop down on your stomach, then push up on your forearms. You look at the woman. You lick your lips and grin. What are you waiting for? You cowards. Why won't you do it? The man and the woman exchange another glance. This time, they're not smiling. The woman advances, climbs up onto the bed. She grabs your thighs, pulling you back towards her enormous cock. You crane your neck to look back at her. Watch the glittering wings on her back unfurl. The wings flap open, then expand, filling the room. I'm gonna fuck this bitch, she says. I'm gonna fuck her good. Hey, says the man, his face against yours, his hand on your neck. You're safe here. You nod, feel him caress your scalp, your cheek. Safe. The man wobbles out of focus. The room flickers. It turns off, then on, then off again. Through a dark corridor, a needle makes its way to your neck. Its tip dances across the surface of your skin, scratching out a secret word in some forgotten ancient tongue. You feel your flesh melt down into jelly, sweet fragrant nectar for the gathering shades to sip. You're safe, says the man. You close your eyes and smile. Yes, you tell him. I know.
Holy shit, that delivery, that was fucking spectacular. And it was as vile as promised.
Yeah.
No, as usual, Unity, you fucking brought it. You fucking killed. Thank you so much.
Damn, you
Thank-
killed that one, man.
Incredible.
Wow.
So next up is Gabriel, but a different Gabriel. Gabriel, aka Baroque Spiral. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm listed on the Ondata Express site as Baroque Spiral, literary idol producer. I'm one of the 2 people currently involved in this small publisher. I don't know if anyone here is following. We're hoping to bring out soon a journal of serial fiction called Hollow House. If anyone, I'm not sure how clear the concept is, but it's like, you know how like most novels through the 19th century were like serialized in magazines, like Dickens or even Dostoevsky or somebody would be releasing their novel in installments, and it'd be in like some magazine that people are reading week or month to month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's been sort of a resurgence in that online through like sort of platforms like Wattpad and stuff, which interestingly, our press, we used to go by Inspiritus Press, and we have something of a background on Wattpad where we were involved in trying to create sort of like a literary fiction network as opposed to just like BTS fan fiction and the other shit that goes on there. And that doesn't really exist much anymore. Wattpad got bought out. It's pretty much sold out now. I don't think there's much of a future for like literary fiction on there, but the serial thing is still interesting. And we decided to make a more literary, more ambitious, more selective serial platform in the form of a journal that we're going to be releasing. We're not sure when, because we're still scouting for a first lineup, and we've got some really cool stuff lined up already, but we're still looking for we still have spots to fill. And
That sounds fucking awesome. Do you have a link that you could drop in the chat? Because
yes, I will do that. And yeah, and I'm about to read a thing that I am currently writing for that. The beginning of the thing I'm currently writing for that. Just a sec, let me drop the link though. Yeah, it's called Hollow House. And
awesome. I'll tweet that link out now when and I'll tag you in it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is part of the first chapter of something called Mercenary Planet. And it's not going to be a part that's going to really explain what the name means. I didn't really want to go out shooting with my brother, but after 2 weeks home, I had faced the truth that I didn't have anything else to do, and I didn't really have a reason to not hang out with him that was actually his fault. I couldn't keep resenting him for what my mom said on the phone on the way home. I don't mind. I can't stop you with this girl thing, but you don't act like that around your brother. That's the rules, okay? He really admires you, and you're one of the few good influences left in his life. Fine, I thought. That's the rules. It's your house, but you never said I had to be that good influence. If I'm a good influence on him, that just ties me down to this place where I can't even find a girl who likes girls on Tinder without having to arrange an hour's transportation and then find she wants to play with every part of my body like it's a weird sex toy, but won't let me touch her. But apparently I didn't stop being this good influence after virtually cutting contact for 3 whole years. Maybe it's even worse if I don't actually talk to him, I thought. Maybe I'm letting him idolize me that way. He's a year out of high school and still hasn't decided on a university, works a part-time job. I meet him at the car he got for his birthday 3 years ago, as per family tradition. Remember the time I sold mine to make a year's rent that I squandered in a blue dark room hating myself, winced, waved. I'm wearing my leather jacket and my hair's bobbing, sticking out in several but not all directions from the back of my neck. His is cut even shorter than the last time I saw it. It was almost the same exact length as the belt of loose scruff under his neck. Jax, short for Ajax, ogles the Roland special I was cradling nervously. I should have thought to bring my small gun. Mine is nothing cool compared to that. My friend's gonna get a Zenith Z5 RS though, if you ever want to come over and try it out. I did. I'd even be able to put up with getting to know his friend for it. What do you even do with a gun like that in the city? We go out to the dog park and shoot frisbees like that lady in Nichijou, I say, referring to a scene in a comedy anime both of us had watched in high school, where a woman throws a frisbee for her dog and then shoots it the moment before he catches it. To be honest, actually getting to shoot these had been the best part of being home. It was the kind of good that wears out fast, and I think I'd been worn out of it within the first week of sneaking out to the fallow field and lining up full bottles of RC Cola on the rotting fence. I had no interest in hunting, shooting birds and squirrels anymore. It felt too much like the casual ways I'd seen people hurt people like me, whereas the way I let out my fantasies of shooting at something bigger in the heat of a moment of thrilling panic felt like, what, shooting at nothing? Shooting at something that comes back stronger? But even that had started to surface as an intrusive thought, looking at the swallows dancing in the sunset. He mostly wanted to talk about the city, about all the things he thought there were to do there, most of which neither of us would have been able to pay for. And there were other things I couldn't do without putting myself through things he wouldn't understand. I felt kind of bad that I couldn't bring back the kinds of adventure stories he wanted, as I tried to remember all the most exotic restaurants I'd been to, the strangest things I had seen on the subway. Yet we had a fun, unsurprising time at the range. It seemed like he had finally caught up to me in terms of accuracy, and took a bunch of phone pics to show Mom, beaming. He seemed to get bored fast, too. By the time we were tired out, we still had 3 hours until we had told our parents to expect us home. And he snuck us out when a minor acquaintance of Dad, whose name I didn't even remember, started prying for details of my past 5 years. On the way out, he pulled his phone out of his pocket. Alistair's got his paycheck. He's getting the Zenith on Saturday. You gonna come with me when I go over to try it out? He's super liberal, too. You won't have to pretend to be a boy around him. I crunched the map I was looking at to decide where to drive next between my palms. Who told you that I was... There weren't any physical signs yet, no real ones, I thought. With Dad refusing to put hormones on his insurance, I'd carefully planned and waited for my financial situation to stabilize, and at the perfect moment it had imploded. I'd finally saved up a summer's worth of pay at a non-minimum, but still low wage. I'd finally bit the bullet on going back to grad school and participating in that one prof who I thought vaguely but at least politely fetishized me's research on radical communal lifestyles in the 21st century. I'd finally gotten a prescription, quit my job with the cleaning crew so I wouldn't have to grow boobs and hips in time-lapse in front of the proprietors, and settled in to spend the summer quietly growing into who I was. Then Sophie had moved out. She couldn't deal with the memories of Delilah, and her new long-distance girlfriend needed her even more than I did. I couldn't blame her. I didn't. Alone in that doubly haunted, devalued and revalued, neglected space with recent cobwebs choking ancient ones over amber-colored wood, I dipped into savings I wasn't supposed to touch to pay the full rent for the no longer group home while I looked hopelessly for somewhere cheaper, convincing Mom and Dad when they called screaming that I would be able to pay for everything in the fall. Then funding for the research group project got cut. I stopped renewing my prescription and went off. I wasn't that deluded about what options I had left. Just a second, need to scroll down. Why is my document not working? I tried sex work a few times, but couldn't force myself consistently enough, especially with the dysphoria getting worse. Mai had offered to move me back in with her, but she needed the burden even less than I did right now. I knew what I had to do, had felt it digging at me like the imp of the perverse since the familiar nightmarishness had caught up with me in the city. Jax blinked. Remember you linked me your Tumblr page ages ago when you were trying to make music? No, I hadn't. I hadn't even told him it was mine, but I must have just linked him a track via my Tumblr because it was easier than sending the file, without even thinking about it because I didn't post anything unusual on there at the time, and he avowedly didn't have any interest in the platform. It had never once come up between us since then. I'd had no idea how much he had been reading it, which would have been really cute and flattering were it not. How much had he read? How the fuck was I supposed to ask that without sounding like a middle schooler? I didn't even realize this at the time, but holy shit, I posted on there the night I came out to my parents. Did he see that? Did he see me having a breakdown and wanting to fuck, even if he hadn't seen that one time? If he's seen enough to know I was trans, he'd seen enough to know the kinds of shit I'd been going through those years, hadn't he? And never once said anything. Not a word of support, not an if you want to talk, not even when I started transitioning for 3 years. This is what I'm processing just now as I write this. None of this even occurred to me at the time. At the time, I was having a weird panic about whether our parents knew that he knew and they had agreed to pretend otherwise just to fuck with me, whether he had been stalking me to report on me to his friends, whether, I pretended just to be embarrassed. I actually literally forgot. I don't stalk it or anything. I just went back to the link one time. I was feeling lonely and wondered what you were up to and saw nothing but trans stuff. It's okay, I'm cool. You always did you. He turned the key and revved the motor, waving goodbye to Dad's Confederate flag jacket patch-wearing friend, who popped out the door of the shooting gallery for a smoke just at the moment we pulled out of parking with the windows down. You okay? Yeah, it's kind of a shock to find out somebody knows that. My voice was cold, curt, and more so as it had instantly become markedly more feminine. The male voice I'd have to put on these past weeks had been as awkward, almost adolescent or English dub anime voice actor as my female voice had sounded those few months I tried internet voice therapy. Right, but I'm not going to judge you or anything, so you don't have to worry about that. Thanks, that really means a lot to me. His voice trailed off. I can call you Leona, right? When it's just the two of us? My doubts washed away, and I only didn't hug him because I'm the most physically awkward person in the world, with no business inhabiting a body of any sort. Please do. Did he know they knew? Did he ever talk to Mom? Mom being the only one who always yelled at me about it, but I shouldn't focus so much on her. She's not the scary one, she's the scared one. She told me Dad didn't even want me to come home, told me she talked him into it, wanted me to thank her. But expecting him to talk to Dad is too much. Expecting any human. He couldn't have done much, I know, but how much could he have tried? I didn't think about any of that in that moment, although I can't remember what I was thinking about now. All these issues, all these trust issue-asked questions would come to me in a long, slow unspooling after what happened next. I didn't think about where we were going as he drove me through the flaking woods in a different direction but still away from home. Just driving in this part of the country was fun. We would both admit freely, and Jerry Lee Lewis was on. I didn't think there was any more to... Why is this scrolling so hard? I didn't think there was any more to it until he turned and the wheels were suddenly pulling through not just gravel, but thick, damp, and the gray thickened and muddied between thin trunks bundled like reeds on one side. On the other, a sickly, swampy field I'd never seen before. He said, excitedly, innocently, without a hint of the change in mood I was feeling on my side of the car, that he was going to show me something. I had to remind myself that if he was really less tolerant than he was saying, he wouldn't have let me bring my gun. He pulled over and screeched the brakes in the ditch when a gray abandoned barn with a half-white painted roof aligned itself with us on the right. I fell out first. My eyes traced a dirt bike track through the weeds to the side door of the barn. Even he was starting to get uncomfortable with the silence, so Jack started filling space with just sort of circuitous carny hype. Like, this is the project I've been working on since spring. Had he mentioned one before? I couldn't remember. I was expected to help him move 2 huge beams across the gate, Davy's idea, which turned out to be redundant with a spotless chrome padlock. Jack slid a key out of his pocket and the door swung towards us like an ambush. What was inside felt like one. Lined up along walls or stacked on the long benches that crossed the barn were huge plastic jugs and other containers of all sizes. Bags of fertilizer piled in one corner, drain cleaner, gas, rock salt. I had noticed the smell before I even entered, but assumed it was some weird plant or pollution. You get more weird smells out here than you think. It smelled like piss, but sweet. I covered my nose. This is the trap, Jax announced. He paced along the benches, rambling about challenges he had to overcome setting this up, and technical did-you-know bullshit for 5 minutes before he noticed my expression. I guess if I was writing a novel or something, I'd try to write some of it out here for verisimilitude. I think I just had that thought because I'm almost tempted to do so to prove to myself he really did, just to know that I can account for how I feel about it. If he hadn't been like that, the reason he felt safe telling me would have been obvious and despicable. He must not have known that Mom and Dad knew about me. It checks out. They obviously wouldn't talk about it to him, and figured he wouldn't have to explain to me that if I told them, he would tell what he knew. Actually, does that explain anything on his own? Why would he want me to tell me anyway? The obvious reason for me to work with him never once seemed to occur to him as he rambled on. He didn't act like he was keeping anything like this at the back of his mind. When he saw me glaring uncomprehending from behind 3 splayed fingers, he first observed, oh, the smell. It was like a cat bringing you a dead bird. It made me wonder, I think it's passing now, if only because my world's changed so much in a single evening since then that I'm instinctively suspending judgment on anything, and there's a weird sense that all burdens might be lifted, all debts canceled, borders dissolved, relationships reset. If my parents were right about us, about more things than I ever imagined they could be right about. Because it was like, and this is just as offensive but more fucked up, the only reason I can imagine why he would show me this is he thinks we're both living in ways our parents and their people wouldn't approve of. So we've got something in common, that we're kindred spirits, partners in crime. He probably felt that way back when he was just plagiarizing that paper for school, which I heard about right around when I started experimentally going outside in that little black dress with the purple embroidered spirals along the hem. He's not entirely wrong. I honestly don't know how much this should even bother me. I've done hard drugs, ketamine the worst, and I've known people who have done a lot more than I have. I yelled at a guy once for kicking a dealer out of a party where everyone was doing coke and Molly anyway, all of them having fun, completely in control of their experience in the long run, except the girl I was there with, because it seemed like such blatant classism, the same thing as if you wouldn't deign to talk to the person who picked your fruit. If he read my Tumblr, maybe he knew about that. I don't criticize rappers for glamorizing dealing anymore, though obviously they're in a different situation. I wouldn't blame whoever Jax picked up trapping from. Maybe Breaking Bad, though. There were 3 different posters of Heisenberg on the walls. Still, it's an insulting conflation, right? It would be if someone made it out loud, but does that mean I should treat it in the same way as an unconscious thing? Right, it's feelings. Should isn't the point, but I'm trying to decide what to write down. Can I write down what even makes me uncomfortable about this? Are the impressions I have of what drugs do to people out here assumptions no better than the assumptions he might have about black men in the trap, or any of his friends might have about me, because those weren't the kinds of people my parents ever let us talk to? Still, he doesn't have to be doing this, and I don't have any idea why he is. I spent most of the time I was there between listening to him brag about things he hasn't done yet, trying to get a clear sense of why he was doing this. I got nothing. It was the same as listening to him talk about the city he doesn't know anything about or make any plans to go to. What does he want to do with the money? We're not poor. And yet I found myself unwittingly acting as the partner in crime he wanted. I held my muscles so tense the whole time to keep from springing and destroying everything in sight, from beating the shit out of him, that I felt them reverting to that spring-loaded state that night in my bed. I could have overpowered him with hardly any struggle if I'd wanted. My few months of hormones hadn't fucked up my muscles. I had never intended to let them. He, on the other hand, didn't seem to have picked up any gains since I had last seen him. I could have killed him, him with the gun, me unarmed, and he knew this. And I knew one thing he didn't that made his most insulting calculation, as I'd analyzed it, worthless. But what still mattered was what I didn't know. I didn't know who he was anymore, how ruthless the person who had made this place was, and how much that person cared about someone like me. I knew Dad was desperate for any reason to get rid of me. If I pissed Jax off, there was nothing to stop him from telling them I'd done anything. He could say I'd shown him this place. Wouldn't matter if it made sense, even if I wasn't me, they'd never decide based on anything like that. And I wouldn't even mind risking homelessness, except I still had responsibilities to someone other than myself, someone more precious than anyone whose life he might ruin out here. Not as if I cared about him ruining people's lives. I'd grown up seeing Dad do it all my life, and it's not like legal or illegal meant shit to me. When he'd opened the door, my honest first thought was he was blackmailing me. But by the end of our conversation, finally, sternly telling him how stupid this was, almost in tears, and watching his face form in genuine confusion, the expression it would around, So? I realized how much more horrifying the truth was. He had genuinely expected me, the sister who had broken every rule ever imposed on her, who was after all an anarchist, anarcho-communist, but would he remember the distinction? So I had to think breaking the law was cool, right? Be enthusiastic about this. But part of him had to know there was a chance I wouldn't. And in that chance, the flip side of knowing he trusted me was knowing he didn't respect me in the slightest. And what reason had I given him to? If we were the same, I had no authority for him. I had the authority to give him every drug safety tip I knew and exchange some he picked up on his own. He agreed enthusiastically to pass these tips on to buyers. There wouldn't be many, I told myself, with this operation. These kids, there couldn't be many. And nodded skeptically when I estimated the safest time to cut them off. But he'd be better off getting lectured by mom and dad than me. One way or another, they still seemed to be the center of this Ptolemaic world sphere we were trapped in, even as we orbited its fringes trying to escape.
That was awesome.
Thanks. And this chapter then takes a completely different turn, which I won't spoil, but recent revelations by the U.S. Navy might give you a hint of what's coming.
Well,
Why?
I love how deep you dig into the details here, like how deep you get inside the head of your narrator. And the paragraph where you go into like the reasons that, like, where the narrator is trying to like dig into the reasons he like decided to use the word trap, and it goes into rap, and then it goes into the Eisenberg posters on the wall. Like there's so much there. Every like moment in this has such a richness and such a depth and such a like cornucopia of awesome details. And I really fucking dug it. And I'm very much looking forward to getting to read the whole thing on your press.
Thanks. Yeah. And there's going to be lots more awesome stuff in Hollow House. This is, just the beginning. And your thing could also be in it. If anyone has anything they want to serialize, feel free to send it to us at ondataexpress@protonmail.com. Just a 1,000-word sample even.
Awesome. And I did link to your Twitter, so if anyone if someone DMs you there and asks for the address to send submissions to.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. Well,
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Thank you for reading.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Up next, I just have to check my list here, is Jesse. Are you still with us, Jesse?
Yes, I'm right here.
Awesome. I just put the link to the piece in the chat.
Okay.
All yours.
I just want to say this is a chapter of a novel that is coming out next year. The chapter takes place in Atlantic City, and it's about a college student who is there on spring break, and all you really need to know is that her stepfather and her father are looking for her. All right, I'll start reading it. Can you hear me?
Sorry, yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Julie didn't want to smoke pot in the hotel room, so Ricky took Ginny and Julie 6 floors down and outside to find a secluded spot on the boardwalk to smoke. Julie didn't really want to, but something about how she was feeling that afternoon made her want to belong. She took one hit off the blunt, and within minutes, her thoughts all grew centipede legs and started crawling away from her. Ricky suggested they go gambling, the 3 of them. Ginny was all about it. Tropicana, Ricky said. Tropicana has the loosest slots. And the loosest sluts, Ginny said. Julie gagged. She watched a movie of herself getting into a cab with the 2 of them. Ricky sat between Julie and Ginny. It was still light out, crowds everywhere. When they got in motion, Julie watched the buildings grow and recede in the window. She saw some guy walking on his hands, legs pointed up at the sky. The adrenaline wouldn't let her calm down as they went through traffic. She had that feeling of needing to trust the driver, but the marijuana not quite letting her. She knew she was too uptight. They could have walked on the boardwalk to the Tropicana, but that would have taken too long, Ricky assured them. Ricky was sitting in between Ginny and Julie, and he was secretly, but not so secretly, pressing his body against Julie's with maximum effort. She was crushed against the inside of the taxi's door. When they got there, of course, it was a big splash, all the palm trees everywhere. Julie felt herself floating as they got out of the cab. The alcohol was catching up with her. The inside of the casino was dizzying with noise and activity. The carpet made Julie want to throw up. It was so busy and mind-bending. It was a mistake to come here after drinking at beach bums and smoking. You needed to be able to think. Julie had to be walked through the casino like an old person. She had to be walked through everything. She had no idea what was going on. Ginny went straight for the slots and started putting in quarters. Ricky told them that cell phones could interfere with slot machines, so he held his up to the side of the machine for a while as she played, looking around as if he was breaking some rule. People milled around by the hundreds, and their noises were like insects falling into sync with the music played over the speakers. The lighting was just barely above murky. Julie thought it was like the inside of a dim movie theater before the lights go black. Ricky took Julie's hand and led her to a nearby roulette table. It felt like the carpet was in motion beneath her feet even when she stopped walking. Ricky and Julie stood at the table watching the roulette wheel turn, and it made her gasp when the dealer sent a little white ball in the opposite direction. The ticking sound of the ball spinning around and around before falling to gravity to skip over all the spots on the wheel sounded very ancient. After watching one go around, Ricky bought $200 in chips from the dealer and gave half the chips to Julie. This alarmed her because it was such a wild display of money on her behalf. The stack of chips made a tense, rattling click when Ricky put them down in front of her. She was too stoned for this. A swarm of betting activity from the other 3 or 4 players standing around, hands reaching to place chips on the grid of numbers. Julie had only seen this in movies or on TV. The other players sounded from their chatter either like overly happy Europeans or young lowlifes from New York City. Ricky placed a bet on the number 7 because he said it was his lucky number. He told Julie to put a chip at the corner of 34. He could have told her to do anything. She put a $10 chip where he said. He smiled at her. The dealer spun the roulette wheel, said when players were to stop placing bets. He fired the ball in the opposite direction of the wheel's motion, and this again hypnotized Julie. The suspense was like an electricity that Julie could feel crackling up from her toes to the top of her head. The number came up, 14, red, and Ricky jumped up, punched the air, and said, "That's right, bitch," then turned and hugged Julie. It seemed to her that he had been rehearsing this gesture in his head for a while. "What happened?" she asked. "You won," Ricky said. But the dealer, a short guy with a gray goatee, used his little rake to collect Julie's $10 chip. Ricky exploded at the dealer. "Wait, she put down a snake bet." "No snake bets at this table." "She don't even know what a snake bet is," a red-black middle-aged man said, looking at Julie. Ricky started to argue with the dealer. He was at home arguing with people like this. Everything's an argument to be won in Ricky's world. After several exchanges, Julie tugged on Ricky's arm to get him to stop. She couldn't bear it much longer. The dealer said, "What are you, Steve Irwin? Do you see any snakes on this layout?" Everyone was staring at Ricky and Julie. Ricky made a display out of pinching the bridge of his nose in exasperation. He looked at her. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have checked before talking you into that bet." "It's what, $10?" Julie said. "It's no big thing." She hated the way that this was putting them on the same team. "I'm just trying to hold on. I don't know if I'm going to make it." Everything was moving so fast. Every event had its own stream, and it was rare that the streams came back together again. She dreaded what would happen if he put down a bet straight up and then it hit. Would they have to jump up and down and hug, make a show out of the fact that he had just won $7,000? Like, would she be his girl then in some kind of Tropicana casino love logic? Ricky ended up winning $40 in little bets. Julie saw Ginny materialize at the table and help herself to Julie's chips. Ginny's laughter sent Julie into a black hole of unconsciousness where she might as well have given it all away. Julie awoke to look down and see Ricky sitting on the edge of the bed. He was talking on his phone. He had it tucked between his shoulder and his ear while he did something with his hands Julie couldn't see. One lamp was on, and so was the TV, and one of those true crime investigation shows was on. Police were being led through a forest to a corpse. It was a reenactment. Julie's head was bouncing around the room. She was under the covers stretching until she sat bolt upright, feeling at herself to see if she was naked. She wasn't completely. She still had her shirt on, but she was in her underwear. How had she gotten here? The last she remembered, she had been at the Tropicana watching the roulette wheel spin and spin, people coming and going, drinks. Nobody else was in the room with them. The clock read 6:34. Out the window, the sky was darkening with clouds. The balcony door was open. Julie could hear the surf. Ricky was in a wife beater. He was just grunting into the phone. He sounded very sober. Nah, I don't think so. No, never that. Because he still owe me money, Gino. Gino, listen, I don't make the rules in this world. I just line up like everybody else. Julie didn't know what had happened or specifically how she had gotten into bed with Ricky. She supposed it was possible that something sexual had happened between them, but she knew that if it had occurred, she had been lost to the world before, during, and after it. Ricky stood up and started slowly pacing the room like a panther. He had obviously just rolled a blunt and he licked it to seal it. She was terrified and just wanted him out of there. Her brain felt starved of oxygen and water. It felt like her brain was crying. She got up and caromed off the wall on her way to the bathroom where she threw up. She stayed there on her knees for what seemed like a week, clinging to the toilet. She was still high. Ricky came to check in on her and she could smell the smoke from his weed, which just nauseated her more. Ricky narrated the situation on the phone. Yeah, I'm with this girl right now. She puking. Not bad looking, maybe 7. She's sweet. I took her to the Trop. I could play Candyland with her. Me and her should have a tea party. No, upstate, I guess. You from upstate, right? He asked her. Who are you talking to? Julie groaned. Go back to bed, he said. You'll feel better there. Julie stood up and looked in the mirror. She looked like a bulldozer had run over her. Somewhere in the last few hours, she put her hair into a scrunchie, and now that had moved around the orbit of her head to wind up practically on her forehead. She ripped it away from her head and threw it in the sink. She staggered out into the hotel room where Ricky was in front of the mirror, flexing and checking his abs to make sure they were still there. Okay, out. Julie said this with one hand against the wall, one hand pointing toward the door. Ricky ignored her and kept pacing, talking to whoever it was on the phone. He would go out onto the balcony to exhale the smoke he took in. Julie checked her phone. It still wasn't working. Shit. She looked around for her shorts, couldn't find them, shuddered to think where they were, so she dug some jeans out of her suitcase and took them into the bathroom and put them on. She didn't want him watching. She looked in the mirror again and did a full damage assessment. This was horrible. When she came back out, Ricky was on the balcony acting like he was some kind of romantic leading man looking out over the water, and she thought of rushing over and sliding the glass door closed and locking him out. She hesitated too long because he came back in and closed the door behind himself. He put the half of his blunt that was left into a dish on the table by the balcony door. He slipped the phone into his shorts. His phone call was over. It was coming at her. I'm going to call the cops, she told him. No, you ain't. She reached out for the room phone and listened to it, but there was no dial tone. What'd you do with the phone? She asked him, a green wave of fear rising up inside her. He slipped past her. He positioned himself in front of the door to the hallway. I'm not going anywhere, Ricky said. Neither are you. It was at this moment that Julie realized it was likely nothing sexual had happened while she'd been passed out. Something about the way he was acting told her that he still had that goal, that it was still an outcome he looked for. He drew the line at raping unconscious girls. He looked down at guys who did such things. What a gentleman. And now that she was awake, he was going to force her. She could scream for help, but somehow she knew that no one would hear her through these walls. Ginny and Christy were possibly passed out or dealing with their own similar problems, or maybe they'd gone out and left Julie to deal with Ricky on her own. She knew that if she locked herself in the bathroom, he would never leave. She would have to come out eventually and he would get her. She had had a few self-defense classes, but they seemed so distant and the lessons so out of reach. But she remembered reading about jujitsu once or being told that it was all about using your enemy's own momentum against them. I feel really gross in here with you, Julie said, but I'm sure once I take a shower, I'll feel better. Can I join you, Ricky said, not a trace of presumption in his voice. You want to take a shower with me? Hells to the yeah. It was a gamble. Julie thought for a second before saying, maybe. I need to get a look at you first. Come in here. Ricky felt his prospects open up. He came into the bathroom while she turned on the water and tested it with her finger. Ricky had a rat-like grin on his face. Take off your shorts, she said. Only if you get down on your knees and take them off me. She thought about her options. Could she play this the right way? He stood there in the bathroom between her and the door. She was completely blocked off and vulnerable to his attack and control. She went onto her knees in front of him. Looking up at him, he seemed like an awful statue with bulging eyes. She reached up to grab his waistband and began to pull it down. She didn't look at his crotch at all as much as he wanted her to. Once the shorts were bunched up around his ankle, he lifted one leg to allow her to free his foot, and then lifted the other leg to free the shorts completely. And once they were free and he was still up on one leg, that is when she lunged upward, bringing her knee up into his crotch with the entire coiled energy of her soccer player's body. The good old reliable crotch shot that drove him backwards out of the bathroom. Ricky collapsed onto the floor outside, holding himself and gasping. Julie was shaking hands, slammed the bathroom door closed, and locked it. She looked through Ricky's shorts for the phone. It was a Motorola flip phone. Thank God, no passcode. The first person that came to mind to call was Alan. After Alan picked up and Julie started talking, Ricky started battering the door. Yeah, you got me good, Julie. I ain't never gonna be able to have kids. I'm gonna kill you, you cunt. You just got a ticket to the emergency room. You better get out of here, Ricky, Julie shouted. He's coming to get me. Who? My stepfather. Your stepfather? Ricky laughed. What, he like 50 years old? I'm gonna knock out all his teeth when he get here. What you know about that? Just get out of here. Without my phone? You must be tripping, bitch. He didn't leave. He ended up sitting on the bed, finishing his blunt in his underwear and thinking of all the things he was gonna do to Julie and her bitch-ass stepfather. At the very minimum, he would black both Julie's eyes. He went back out on the balcony to smoke. He watched TV. He got very thirsty and asked Julie through the door if he could at least get a drink of water from the bathroom. Go get some ice and melt it, she said. He punched the door. Give me my phone back. Just then there was a knock on the door. Showtime. He opened the door, standing there in his briefs like what? All attitude, all South Jersey coming through loud and clear through him. A man with a red beard and glasses rushed inside and shoved Ricky back towards the balcony, out the balcony door, then pushing his chest so he flipped over the balcony railing into the evening air. And Ricky clung to the railing in his underwear with both hands and both calves, and it was 6 stories down to the pool. Ricky knew that if he fell, he would likely miss the pool and hit the concrete. Ricky looked away from the chasm beneath him, up at the man holding him just inches away from death. The stepfather had pure insanity in his eyes, and he bellowed, "Where's Julie, you insect?" Ricky knew he was about to die. "She's in there, in the bathroom. The bathroom, I didn't touch her, I swear." The stepfather looked back over his shoulder and growled, "The bathroom," to another man who would come in afterwards. There was a knock on the bathroom door, and Ricky heard Julie's terrified voice saying, "Dad, Dad," to the second man. And they were clearly having an emotional reunion, and Ricky, dangling upside down like a treed cat, knew he was clearly fucked. He started spitting out any game he could. It was a misunderstanding. It was a mistake. He was in the wrong room. Could he pay them something? "Stop talking. I don't want to hear your voice," the stepfather in the beard said to Ricky. No one had ever scared Ricky like this guy. Julie's dad would be enough, but the stepfather holding Ricky over a balcony railing seemed like a stone-cold killer.
That was awesome. I love how you build tension in this. Like it just ratchets up and ratchets up and ratchets up. Um, and and I also like I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I'm so risk averse myself, but I have a real fascination for stories about gambling. I think it's like the idea of like fundamentally small people trying to like find ways to work the system. And this story like really delivers on that front. I love the detail of like trying to hold the cell phone up to the slot machine as if that would make a difference. There are all these wonderful little details like that in this piece. And like I said, it just keeps getting more and more tense until it like really blows the fuck up at the end. That was awesome, Jesse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. And next up, or I guess last up tonight, because I don't think I should check, but it did Blink show or not? I don't see him here. Don't think so. So if if Blick isn't here, then I think that only leaves Rudy for tonight, but we actually do have time for once to have an open mic. So if you'd like to read, just throw something in the chat while Rudy's reading, and then we will maybe have a like brief intermission after Rudy's done because I have to use the bathroom, but then we'll do an open mic. So Rudy, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. So I'm kind of doing an experiment with format here. This is a flipbook thing that I posted on my blog. And if you go down and scroll to the place where you can flip the pages around, which you can do with the mouse, if you go to page 58, if you want to follow along, if not, that's no big deal. But that's, like I said, it's just kind of an experiment in format. All these pieces are kind of supposed to be like this slapstick type of thing. So I figured I'd go with the flip book deal to make it, to give it that extra Looney Tunes smile, I guess.
Sorry, Rudy, could you repeat the page number again?
Oh, it's 58 it starts on. The story is called Fluid. I'm just going to read that one. Fluid. From their secret hideout underneath the headquarters of the Southern Poverty Law Center in Montgomery, Alabama, the hyper-clandestine New Islamic Caliphate was ready to dominate the world. It was led by its 5 pillars, who on this day included Ashraquat El-Amin, whose job was children's birthday party magician elsewhere, but supreme leader in this particular context. Amir, the supreme leader's magical talking burqa, 2 feral cats, the smallest Islamofascist, and the other guy, Sagdia, who is some retard from a backwater foreign country. Amir got as far as saying, Sagdia is a fucking, before Ashraquat silenced him with a wave of her left hand. He's a famous, another hand wave. Shush. I don't want to hear any more about Sagdia's brilliant career in old country, Ash said, salty that Amir was seemingly trying to elevate this dude who they kept around as a whipping boy because it made everyone feel good. But it's not, he's known here. He's written for reasons understood only to her neuroatypical brain. At this very specific time, Ash felt like her success as a supervillain, as an anti-Semitic Islamic hardliner, hell, as someone who had tinkered with writing every once in a while, was being compared to Sagdia's. And she didn't like how she was stacking up. Dude, shut the fuck up about Sagdia, she blurted out. I'm the supreme leader. Me. Who the fuck is Sagdia anyway? Amir shifted uncomfortably, chafing Ash's body with his little calm down dance. He sighed and tried again. That's what I'm trying to explain. He's actually, Ash's raised hand halted his concerns, or at least his tongue. Ashraquat El-Amin was on the defensive, like the Israeli army in Xenophobia, the heavily anti-Semitic Half-Life 2 alternate history fan fiction she penned anonymously on AO3 when she wasn't supervillaining. In the story, the humiliating 6-day war was supplanted by the 7-hour war. Oh, and these links are clickable, just so everybody knows. With the ensuing chaos leading to the creation of an Islamic caliphate for some reason. A lot of Jews were subsequently killed or fed to alien wildlife. Episode 3 culminated with the G-Man standing in front of a portal next to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi declaring, in his appropriately tone-deaf, weirdly enunciated way. The right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world. The work was complex, according to the sock puppet account Ash had set up to leave herself comments, employing anti-Zionist caricature, numerology, and knock-knock jokes. Feeling it was time to commence official business, Ash pulled a large scimitar from Amir's dimensional pocket and used it to slice apart a Magneto action figure. As the likeness of Sir Ian McKellen's head rolled onto the floor, Amir rolled his eyes and Sagdiev, who was handy with the audiovisual stuff, rolled tape, dutifully recording the meeting. Above them, someone yelled, "Roll Tide," as the Alabama NCAA Division I's men's basketball team sparked to life on a 72-inch office television. It was Saturday, and only the janitorial staff were on the premises. "Gentlemen," Ash said after she cleared her throat and tossed the scimitar, nearly cleaving one of the cats in two. "Today is the day we make good on our plan to eliminate the state of Israel once and for all." Amir yawned. Sagdiev gave the thumbs up. During the 2 hours that followed, Ash pulled from her burqa several bulletin boards, 2 Alienware laptops, a manila folder filled with chemistry white papers, a Bunsen burner, various Iranian scientists, and a nuclear warhead. At least 20 minutes were spent figuring out what to do with the Bunsen burner. It was eventually decided that it could be used to incinerate the white papers containing Jewish-sounding publication credits, which Sagdiev happily took to the task. The basketball game streaming on the smart TVs upstairs voraciously consumed data for its 2.5-hour duration, but after Alabama lost 69 to 150 and a broom handle was subsequently rammed through an LED screen, Ash was finally able to rub together enough stolen Wi-Fi bandwidth to connect the laptops to the internet. The 5 huddled together, cats in front, and logged on to the United Nations Zoom homicide hotline, which was the place where supervillains queued to make their demands publicly. They waited for another 30 minutes in the virtual waiting room, and if it seems like not much gets done at these meetings, that's because it doesn't. The Zoom session began. "Nuke?" queried the United Nations Secretary General, a gaunt African man with hair like Albert Einstein and a voice that sounded like a horse Niels Bohr after a shouting match with the former. Ash pushed the weapon across the floor so it was visible on the webcam. "That looks real. Threats? Demands?" The Supreme Leader cleared her throat, which was filled with all the voices of all the stone-throwing children struck down in Gaza Strip by occupiers' bullets, and also phlegm from their seasonal allergies. She held up her chin high, for her struggle was righteous. She considered herself a martyr, since she had no life but this and occasional Gary's Mod shenanigans. And that's the definition of a martyr, right? Someone who dies, read no life, for a cause. The USB key she wore around her neck wasn't sanctioned by any Ayatollah, but it did contain a Half-Life 2 level called Paradise, which was good enough. Ash's monologue began with a recital of the names of ISIS suicide bombers killed in Syria during the past hour. The Secretary General made jerk-off motions when she wasn't looking and gave attentive nods when she was. She started to take off her shoe to bang it on the table for Khrushchevian emphasis, but then remembered that she was a woman on the internet and foot spies were everywhere, and she didn't want to wind up on WikiFeet, so instead she just banged her fist. "We plan to dissolve Israel, the so-called Jewish state, using an acid made from the precious bodily fluids of the world's most caustic Jews." By the next morning, Sagdiev, who was very industrious for an intellectually stunted half-wit, had used his huge omnifragrant snaz to sniff out the current location of the notorious Jewish activist, vampire, and comedian Sacha Baron Cohen, after being given a map of the world to work from. "I've never liked his work," Ash opined, while Amir's anxiety levels spiked so much that she could feel him vibrating. "Ali G and the other one there. Boring as fuck." The foreigner pointed like a bloodhound to France, his finger landing on a city in the southern part of the country. "Nice," he said, nodding. "Actually," Ash snarked, "it's pronounced Nice." A lot of the wealthy elite kept summer homes on the French Riviera, so it was no surprise that Cohen, a Jew with more funds than a Federal Reserve money machine that went burr, was there in the current fair weather season, sunning himself on pristine beaches like the reptile he pretended not to be. We must have his blood, Ash affirmed. Like that line from the song Californication, Amir's fearful vibrations were good ones to Ash, who used him as a sensory blanket to stave off her own tremulousness while the new Islamic Caliphate traveled across the ocean on a magic carpet, a chill friend who owed Amir a favor. They crested the Tower of St. Francois by nightfall, and soon after descended into the domain of quiet burb houses with rows of manicured hedges and Mediterranean stonework. It's for your own good, Amir, Ash said sadly, as she carefully tucked her burqa into a satchel in the bathroom of a French McDonald's. His pleas of, "This is fucking stupid," and "I can literally make you invisible," were hushed as Ash changed into a modest jacket dress and let her hair down, topping off her attempts to blend in with a green beret. Saugiev put on a pair of Kurt Cobain sunglasses, straightened his gray suit, and led the way. Cats in tow, with satchel-bound Amir babbling incoherently, the pair traipsed up and down narrow streets that turned into cobblestone and back to pavement, stopping once to buy bread at a little bakery on the Rue de la Distraction. All day they meandered through long stretches of cafe-laden alleyways where tete-a-tetes and rolled R sounds and the smell of baked goods dulled the senses and slowed the blood like some kind of Kabbalistic ritual of pacification. By dusk, the itis was setting in, and the pink-orange sky, lit by a huge illuminated Ferris wheel, was threatening to turn the mission of jihad into a pleasant evening by the sea. The presumably supernatural sense of smell that allowed Saugiev to track Jews was now distorted by the olfactory chaos of the major city, while Ash, devoid of Amir's light-diluting screen and personal space regulation, was quickly falling prey to overstimulation. Total sensory overload reared its head, and the two were soon separated. Darkness fell. When Ash emerged from her daze, she was seated on a bench, cliffside, next to a mysterious man in a trench coat who was observing her through a conspicuous and very unnecessary magnifying glass. Something about his mustache was strikingly familiar. Who the fuck? She internally monologued. A mouthful of the most stereotypical franglais, the type a daft foreigner impersonating a Frenchman for comedic effect was dealt out, sprayed from the man's speak hole, but it had the vague shape of officiality. Le chat, cat, was the only thing Ash understood. By the time she figured out that he was inquiring about her license for the two littlest pillars, he had become angry, incredulous, or epileptic, maybe all three, and tumbled down a nearby staircase. A splash echoed from below. Okay. At length, Ash continued her wandering, moving several blocks to the east. The constant tremble of her satchel served as a reminder of the mission. Fuck, she was exhausted. Patting Amir gently to soothe his fitfulness, she surveyed the streets for any sign of a hotel. That's when she saw him. The Jew Cohen, jet black three-piece suit suggesting that he had either evoked some sophisto fashion event or emerged from torpor in his burial garments, was checking into a Marriott, toad in one hand, RFID beastmark in the other. Amir must have sensed his master's tension. His vibrations became spasms and intifada. In a matter of moments, Ash had dashed into another, seedier McDonald's bathroom, largely abandoned at this hour, and engaged in a presto changeo suiting up routine that would have given the creators of Superman 4-hour erections, if they weren't both bloodless Jewish statement with retractable hemi-penises. After she was back underneath the mirror, shielded from the long takes of the world's voyeuristic camera lenses, Ash sighed deeply and stilled her mind in the void. Silence, inside and out. Some rude frog's gurgling diarrhea brought her back to her. Amir, who saw through the stall, the buildings, and the treachery of Western civilization, was screaming that Cohen was about to board a sedan. He would soon be whisked away by 8 cylinders of German power, and unfortunately, none of them contained Zyklon B. It only took a single exclamation for Ash to alakazam herself on top of the rapidly moving Audi A8L. A quick open sesame from Amir threw back the sunroof, which the pair quickly entered, taking up residence in the passenger seat. What? Cohen blurted out as the navigation system alerted him that he was drifting into another lane. Ash's scimitar had already pierced the comedian's stubbly cheek by the time he was cogent on the fact that he was being menaced by a weapon from Aladdin, the cartoon movie that had been entertaining his now slumbering daughters in the back seat. The red essence flowed down to his chin as the scimitar carved a wider indentation, then began falling onto his lap and onto Ash's sleeve, which was Amir's tongue. After he had filled 2 vials with the vile liquor, Amir turned his wearer, himself, and their precious liquid cargo into thick black smoke, which wafted out of the car into the dark night. Something about his face, Ash mused, as they trudged from the scene, sirens lighting up the alleyway behind them. I tried to explain, Amir quipped. It was like these people all look the same. Right, so anyway, let's go find Satya. Amir moaned. It was the next day before a very haggard Satya returned, wearing a Dr. Strangelove t-shirt that he had apparently purchased from a tourist stand. Look at this brazen fucking heat, Amir sneered, having been prepared to board this return carpet without their so-called 5th pillar. But Ash threw her arms around Satya, which by extension forced Amir to do the same, and gave him a pat on the back. Amir became livid. Fucking, dude, you came back here with the wound we gave you last night. Are you stupid? Are you... Ash waved her hand. Amir, it's Sagdia. Look, hello? Use your eye spots. A very befuddled Sagdia blinked and looked between Amir and... Well, he could really only look at Amir because Ash was covered by Amir. I'm Sagdia, he said, launching into a nod that became faster and faster until he was wearing a broad, stupid smile that highlighted the scars on his cheek and elsewhere. And that's the end.
That was fucking hilarious. You definitely nailed the Looney Tunes slapstick thing in this one. I especially like the Borat nice niece joke. That one fucking killed me. Yeah, no, it was so fucking funny. And as usual, so incredibly inventive with the puns and the details and the wordplay and stuff. Great shit, man.
Well, thanks.
Dude, your writing is so good. It's like the embodiment of like the sock and buskin, the tragic comedy, like where it's both at the same time, and it's like it's not quite duality because it's at the same time, like it's all threaded. Like the original, like the formal translation of the word angst is like German. It just means nameless dread. This is like comic angst, right?
Comic angst. Yeah. Thanks. That really kind of makes me happy with the format that I chose for it and the way the Looney Tunes thing really that venerates me there. I think.
Yeah.
So I like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really good work. Thanks for sharing it.
Yeah, it was awesome, Rudy. I'm going to run to the bathroom very quickly, and then we'll do the open mic, okay? I'll be right
All right, I'm gonna head out. Night, everyone.
Take it easy, Molly.
Night.
Oh no, a stuffed unicorn. Oh boy.
All right, so I guess we can do the open mic now. I know Dan said he had a poem to read. I'm not sure if anyone else, Rudy, did you see anyone else?
I think Derek said he wants to do something and is preparing something, I believe.
Oh, cool, cool. So maybe we'll let Dan go first and then Derek. And if anyone else has anything to read, they can just put it in the chat.
This is a poem called Becoming a Woodwose in Montreal. And I wrote it kind of like after getting out of the hospital or after being hospitalized the first time. When the mail came, we rubbed our hands together like flies, a parcel of grandmother's love, cookies and candy, tea and playing cards. Cross-legged on the floor, I spread the cards, divining, looking for my suit and number, and death's herald. But all I found was your likeness and the Queen of Hearts. You slid the king to me, but I preferred the Joker dragging the stone. It was the last time you rolled your eyes at me. Civilized we sat, our chairs scraping the hardwood floors. I was haunted furniture gathering dust, barking to the old gods living between cracks in the walls, while you colored the dead crows on my shoulders. Your camera built my good side, dressed in your wool sweater. What did you see crouching next to me? The wolf soul or just those red bricks and blue paint peeling out of frame? The shutter closed and the flash seared a blue phosphine dot into my eyes closed, far away in the dark, and then I was gone. That night you slept with Orion's belt shining through the bedroom window while I watched my shadow shifting in your dumpster mirror, whispering to the ghosts of dead leaves dancing on my altar. A thicket grew in the blackness between us. and the smell of hemlock needles twisting synapses, you woke to howling. Naked on all fours with canines bared, I crawled over you, his unchained dog, bearded, otherwise a hairless animal, breathing on your face. Then I didn't understand your tears, but still I licked them up.
That was beautiful, Dan. I love the imagery in this poem. Yes, Mr. Bones. Mr. Bones loved it too, I guess, because he screamed about it. But now I love all of the haunted furniture line, all the like old rotting house feels here. I don't know. It's just beautifully written. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I love the way you use animals. And sorry if I cut you off. I love the way you use animal like imagery and animal like feels basically, and it runs throughout the whole of your work and stuff. And it's really cool. I think, is this one from that that audio piece you linked on Twitter? I know.
Yeah, Eris read this poem like a few years ago, and then I turned it into, I integrated it into like an interactive fiction a while back.
Yeah, that was really good, and there are a couple really good lines in it. But I really like the way you alternate in that one between like the Siri voice and the the narrators, like you and Eris reading. That is like really cool. That really caught me. I think I listened to it, or I did the twine, whatever, like later at night, and it really kind of put a chilling type of vibe into my night. So it was really cool. Really loved that piece, and this is a really good poem from it.
Yeah, thanks. I recommend anyone with any kind of like hyperfixation or like obsession or rumination to make a twine game where they make a robot do EMDR therapy on them, or like your own kind. It's pretty much free, whereas EMDR costs like $200 a session if you don't have insurance. So just get twine. It's fine.
Yeah, I've actually done EMDR, and yeah, that's basically, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Derek's up next.
All right, thank you guys so much, man. Everything's been awesome. I really appreciate you letting me read too. I know it's late. It's awesome, really good. I wrote this yesterday. It's called My Cousin Tries and Fails to Arrest Me. My cousin, like a lot of cousins, is a racist city cop. He's got a couple acres on a pond they call a lake in a whole nother county. I went to a party at my cousin Ronnie's when I was 13, 14. He was in his early 20s. I saw some shit that night. This is another night, though. I put the thing up there that happened in the title of the story so I don't get too high and forget what I meant to tell you. I'm 23 or 25 that night. I'm walking around downtown after a punk show lets out at Pablo's. It's 4 blocks to Big Dave's. He said I could crash. We'll watch Fletch again. It'll be great. First up, I run into Amanda in front of the hotel on Cherry Street. The chances of my cousin reading this are basically 0, I'm sure. I have to be sure. I love my cousin and family and God and America and the troops and Fox's Transformer NFL graphics and cold wet beer and jet skis. I love jet skis. I've never ridden one. I'm scared to love a thing. It hurts to love a thing, almost regardless. Amanda's got herself in a situation with some guys and some money and some coke, but she's scared to go up alone. She only met them that night, 3 of them, but there's always more inside. Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Wake Forest University. Rich medical students. It's my fault things are real. I've never been big. I've always been unsteady. I have always been unstable. I disarm you with my weakness, not my strength. and lack. I took the elevator up with her. When we got to the room, she hid me around the corner. I stared at a corporate painting of a seascape for 55 minutes. I memorized the ridges of the red with blue triangles. There must have been hundreds. They were strewn on the hallway like glittering stars in a sea of blood carpet. I did not move. I still watch pornography when you are asked about the cowardice of men. One of them was a cop, undercover, 55 minutes. The one of them that was a cop that was undercover was my cousin Ronnie, that racist city cop with that pawn trailer I was telling you about. There were several of them in there. 5 or 6 it must have been. 15, 16 in my darker moments. Apparently, he only brought one pair of handcuffs, and no one else thought to bring one as a toy because she only came out with her hands to hide behind her back. The rest of them, heads down, giggling, April tans, eyes odds, probably your wife's gynecologist now, took their ride down the elevator and into the night like the fickle, wispy wind that brought them to a scene in a fictional story in a hotel on Cherry Street in 2000, green Eddie Bauer Ford Explorer. Ronnie looked at me and laughed. No fucking way. Dude. Don't fucking dude me. You know this whore? I knew that whore. But I hope he doesn't read this. I don't want him to feel bad. I knew that whore, I should say. I'm gonna fucking arrest you. I said, no, you're not. And I said it real cocky, and I walked off like the stage direction said to, like the narrative arc demands, like the conventions of storytelling require, like a night in early spring in 2000, outside the Cherry Street Hotel. My cousin tries and fails to arrest me.
That was fantastic. I love the ending on that piece. I love that. I love the way it snaps back to fiction, to the conceit, right? You have that moment. And I know I do this in my head, right, too. You have these moments in life where things feel so perfectly theatrical, and then you create that framework within your mind. And in some ways it ruins the moment because you can't just enjoy the fact that you've just done something that you think is like that rad, because your brain is like, yeah, this is like a movie. And then you're like, oh, the rest of life isn't.
There was this really, I think it was a book first. I didn't read the book, but there was the movie The Wonder Boys. Did you ever see that with it's like a writer movie or whatever, where it's like Robert Downey Jr., Michael Douglas.
I know exactly the movie you're talking about. I haven't seen it though. It was when it came out, it was a big deal. It was critically acclaimed. I remember people were making a lot of noise about it, and I was like, I'm gonna watch this.
I don't remember if it was good or not. I really don't. I saw it years ago once, but I just remember that there's a scene where Tobey Maguire is drunk and they're leading him to the bathroom, and as they're leading him, he's narrating the whole scene drunk or whatever. And I always liked that, while you're living your life, you sit there and you're also writing it as it goes and letting both fuck with the other. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Derek. That was awesome.
It was really good. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Dan. It's all you.
All your work is it reminds me of the concept of bearing witness, where you are kind of you have these experiences, and maybe in the moment you can't do anything about them, and writing about them helps you either process, or I don't know if it's real or anything, but your work reminds me, has that Southern Gothic. I don't know if that's racist to just say it's Southern Gothic because it's set in the South, but Cormac McCarthy's biblical kind of cadence. I feel that in all your work that I've heard you read. So thank you.
Thank you. That's really, really nice.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. Did anyone else want to read tonight? Rudy, did anyone else say anything in the chat? I always have trouble following it.
Yeah, I think Damien wants to read.
Oh, cool. Damien.
Yeah, this is from A novel that I'm not going to put out. Yeah, I have a short chapter, and the chapter is called Texas Chainsaw. Like my parents, I failed my child. I said I'd do everything to not become them, and then I became them. Give him the stability he didn't have, feed him and keep him safe. We go without dinner for another night. Even when we remain in the same house, the city zoning laws move him to a different school every year. If only you knew what I went through. If only you knew how good you have it. What do you have to cry about? These damaging words my father said to me that I spat on my son. In time, he will learn to retaliate and hate me, as he should, but I will continue to fight for his respect. I will continue to say the wrong things and fuck up, and because of this, he will kill himself. I know this because my parents had driven me to suicide before he was born. If he's already attempted once, it's only a matter of time before he does it again in a more efficient way. One day, I will walk in on my son's bedroom. He will have started puberty, and the trauma will have manifested into every part of his being. The triggers and nightmares will attack him every hour of the day. His mind will only think in fight or flight. He will stop feeling comfort in his body and begin to cut it, burn it, and punch it. Eventually, he will turn to drugs. The lethal combination of self-harming while under the influence of pain medication will lead him to pass out on the carpet, having fallen out of his computer chair, and I will find him there, green ash tree, angel rotting, bleeding out, coffin nailed shut. His father will not understand until after he's dead, as he doesn't now. He doesn't need therapy. Boys like to be left alone. Did you like being around your parents? Maybe he's not reacting because he is not actually traumatized. He is fragile glass, shattering in slow motion, and there's nothing any of us can do to stop his inevitable death. My parents have been pipeliners for almost 30 years, destroyers of the earth. They drill holes into indigenous lands, risking violent death each day, and come home to their motor home with barely enough money to afford fast food. Their lives are centered around work, making money, and losing money. From birth until I left the Midwest 6 months after Dee was born, I traveled and lived in more than 40 states with them. There's no sightseeing, no time for tourism or vacation, no time to settle down and make best friends. I lived as a wayfarer and a mistake they had to drag around wherever they went. Their payoff came when a job was completed, and then we could go back to our home in our rusted and decaying rural Iowa town, and they wouldn't have to work for 2 or 3 months. Watch me leave without saying goodbye and someday prove to you that I could be the parent I should have been when I had grew up. I saw what both of you had done wrong, so I knew the best way to raise a child. 5 or 6 days out of the week, 50 to 65 hours in total, I have been distilled the same toxic work mentality that my parents have. Another day of seeing my son for a total of 30 minutes, excluding the drive home from daycare or baseball practice. When I pick him up and see his disinterest in me and of himself, I let the apathy kick in and I give up. Life is a horror movie, and despite all the violence I witnessed, I am the sole survivor, even though I'd rather have been the first one dead. In the middle of work, stalking bras at Victoria's Secret, when a man jumps off the highest balcony of the mall, everyone rushes out to see his corpse splattered into the ice skating rink. All I can think about is Dee. He goes to that skating rink all the time when I can't afford to take him to daycare and have to bring him to work. I'm not going to tell him about it, but he's going to somehow find out from someone at school or work. When he finds out, it's going to plant an idea in his head, and I'll be stacking bras in a crowded store like I'm doing now, and then I'll hear the slam outside the store and see my angel boy shattered like glass on the frozen floor, pieces of him scattered everywhere in an unrecognizable mess. The store didn't close that day. A half hour later, the body had been bagged and taken away. The gore had been swept and soaked up. The shoppers had either left or gone back to shopping, and I was back to work, shaking, thinking about when I jumped off a roof as a teen and failed to die. Dee was molested in a mall, and yet I kept working on her. Oh, I'll just transfer to a different one. It's safer there. He doesn't care. It's not like he even remembers it. Something like that would never happen again to him. When people would rob our store and hold knives or unloaded guns at me and my employees, I'd chase after them until the mall officers caught up to arrest them. Another award from the company means more money. Money is worth dying for if it means giving your child food and that he can continue going to daycare. Yes, my life is expendable for these pieces of clothes made in sweatshops and prisons. Some days when I'm at work, I imagine I'll get shot in the stomach and bleed out slowly, or shot in the face, and the brutal murder of my murder is what I'll be known for. I'm at work folding panties and sorting dresses and thinking about my helpless son getting shot to death in school while I could be shot to death in the mall, and how he was raped by someone I trusted while I was busy working and not thinking or noticing, and I was busy shopping while he was being molested. A few hours after I get off on my late shift, one of the teachers at Dee's school calls to inform me that he's gotten sick on the first night of science camp that I signed off on a week ago. They're out in the middle of rural nowhere 2 hours away and tell me that I need to pick him up tonight because they can't let him sleep in his room while he's sick, and they have too much to do in the morning. Dee's father guilt trips me into picking him up since he has to work earlier than I do and make more money than me. And I make more money than him. So I print off the directions to the camp, read them over in the car, and cruise on the vacant roads. Folded up papers in one hand and the steering wheel in the other, the roads become darker and desolate with less street lights. Each turn bends over itself in a new void. It only gets darker with each passing minute. When Dee gets sick, he hallucinates, he hurts himself and sobs madly. He needs me, but I feel like I'm only getting further away from him. I put the car in park, attempt to go through the printed out steps and my own memory of where I've gone, but it's too late in the night to think properly. When I look up, I notice a man wearing a horrifying plastic mask resembling a skinned face and that he's holding a revved up chainsaw. I scream and remember the movie that he's dressed up from and slam on the wheel and then he's chasing after me. Like in a horror movie, I spend way too much time hyperventilating and looking up at the rearview mirror and almost slam myself into a tree. But when I slow down, he's closer back to the truck and then I'm screaming again. I get away. I'm driving as fast as I can down dirt roads with no signs or lights in my way. The gas tank is getting low. Living a nightmare. This is how I'm going to die. Manager at Victoria's Secret is slayed, skinned, and cannibalized in a small rural white trash Texas town. Son dies in his teacher's arms, vomiting to death. It's when I think I found my way again that I end up hearing the chainsaw crackling and grinding too close to the car, but I can't see him anymore. And then I'm driving in circles, throwing the papers around, crying to God, cursing at my parents and attempting to tear the wheel out of the car as my back bends into my seat. He's gone and I'm finally seeing what was on the paper, but the gas is too low and I don't even want to go home. I want to take Dee with me to a hotel and sleep there for the night. I want to squeeze him until he does the same to me and pretend that we're not in Texas anymore. Shoes clicking. I'll take you wherever you want, Dee. Saturn, here we come. By the time I pick him up, he's running a fever, vomited everything out of his stomach, and has scratched his arms bloody. I sit with him in the car outside of the camp and listen to him crying, and all I can do is stare at the lake and think about driving us into it. The kids forced him to drink spoiled milk, and another kid put mayo and mustard on his burger. His food isn't used to that greasy shit either. Then they made fun of him for getting sick. Please put me in a different school, he begs. I want to start over. They liked me. Why does everyone hate me here? Why can't I stop being a fucking retard? If I weren't paralyzed by the fear of being bisected on the way home, I would have slapped him and told him not to use those words, but then he'd just cry even more. He shivers and aches more as I begin driving home. How much longer, Ma, please? I look at the clock, almost 2 a.m. now. I need to go to the bathroom. Please, I don't want to go in the car. Once I find a gas station, I finally feel like I can exhale. I can kiss him on the forehead and walk with him near a dumpster so that he can pee. Afterward, he sits back in the passenger seat and vomits into a plastic bag as I look for my wallet. I leave the radio on with the windows down as I step out to get gas. No wind, the cool settled air of a hole in nowhere, the same Stone Temple Pilots grunge song playing for the 100th time this week. The second I turn around and putting the nozzle in the tank, I hear the click of the safety being taken off a gun, and it's the lips of the gun pressed to my forehead. He speaks before me, asks for my phone and wallet, But before I can say anything, he notices me move and steps away before yelling at me, commanding me I don't move. I threw my wallet in my seat. I rushed as I explained, I'm pregnant and my son's in the car. I'll give you what you want, but please don't hurt us. Please, I get it. We're poor too. Don't fucking move. I'll get it. If you do, I'll shoot your fucking kid and then I'll shoot you. But my mother instinctively betrays me as I turn around to see if Dee is okay. And then he fires his gun through the open windows of the car. Dee doesn't make a sound, so I can only figure that he's fucking dead. Once he grabs my wallet, he asks for my phone, so I hand it to him with my eyes swollen and blinded with tears. Then he fires again, maybe up in the air. I feel my heartbeat jump out of my chest as my body throttles itself back into the car. I open my eyes and he's gone. Dee still hasn't made a sound. Oh my God, oh my God. I can't do this. Please, God, don't take him. I gaze into the open window. Dee is holding onto his left ear and his upper body is spinning in circles with a droning look in his eyes. Suddenly his pupils expand and then he collapses into a seat, chest between legs, head hanging down, and hair almost touching the plastic bag of vomit. When I go to reach for my flip phone, I forget that it was stolen. At least the tank is half full now. He must see me as a literal mold of steaming, coiled excrement when I hold him. My son, who won't allow himself to be touched by anyone, even love horrifies him. He doesn't understand why his body reacts the way it does. Eventually, the touch he felt from X and the stranger inside of the mall will be the only thing that feels real to him. He will become addicted to it until it destroys him. After he finds me sobbing on top of the toilet seat in the guest bathroom, his father finds him hiding under the computer table with a kitchen knife, ready to stab him in case he raised his voice at me again. Then I'm told I need to punish him for this, so I dismantle all of his Lego sets piece by piece, throw them in the trash, and tell him that I got rid of them because he needs to grow up and stop being a kid. You can't just kill your parents, you know. I fucking hate you. He cries his words with disappointment instead of anger. You're the worst mother ever. The mall's empty of customers. Not even Muzak is playing yet, and the morning shift workers barely make a sound as they prepare to open their stores. I sit down at a random table in the food court and take in the smell of everything I can't afford. Across from me is the Barnes & Noble that Dee prefers to spend his time. He reads, asks for me to buy him books, but I can't, so I just let him read there. On the opposite side of the bookstore is the Dave & Buster's, where he's been saving up to win another lava lamp. I sit alone and call my mother, and I tell her what Dee said to me when I threw away his Legos, and I'm sorry for hating her and Dad so much, and I want to forgive, and maybe things can get better. I'm no longer thinking about what happened at the ice skating rink. Instead, I imagine the day that Dee survives all the trauma that will scathe him, and that he will apologize for hating me for so long. And that's it.
Wow, that was really fucking powerful. And like early on, like the descriptions that like fatalistic sense that like this suicide is going to happen, like this view of like trauma and depression and mental illness is this like closed cycle that you can't escape and that you have to watch, like, and imagining being a parent and thinking about that, like it's as someone who's like who often sees like my own depression that exactly that way, to be the parent from the outside looking in and to see it that way in your child, like you can just imagine how excruciating that must be, and you really capture that in this chapter, and it's just really fucking powerful shit, Damien. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
So I don't think, Rudy, has anyone else said that they'd like to read, or are we going to kind of close up shop for the night?
I didn't see anybody else, but if anybody wants to jump in, now is the time.
Yeah, last call here. No, okay. So I think we're going to end the reading there. As always, I'm going to keep the Zoom meeting up for however much longer if people want to hang out or whatever. But If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, this has been Misery Loves Company. We do this every fucking week, every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you follow us at Misery Tourism on Twitter, I usually tweet out the link about 10 minutes. Yes, Mr. Bones. Yes, I'll feed you in a minute. I usually tweet out the link 10 minutes or so before we start. Thank you so much, everyone, for reading. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and listening. It's been another awesome fucking night. All right, that's it. I'm done.